Welcome to the 10-Minute Life Lesson Podcast. I'm Jay Cleveland Payne. When this timer hits 9 minutes and 55 seconds in this recording, you'll have a fully developed life lesson that you can take with you and begin immediately implementing. The podcast falls under the umbrella of my greater personal development efforts, all under the Your Better You brand. For information on accountability coaching or to gain access to tools, tricks, or life hacks, visit yourbetteryou.info. Thank you for joining me on the journey today. Now, here is this week's life lesson. There is a term that is used loosely for people who find a way to success, who basically had no reason to believe they could make it or no way to know that what they were doing was horrible. And it's a pretty simple explanation. It's basically calling yourself too dumb to know that you're doing the wrong things, too dumb to know better, too dumb to realize that the barriers that are in your way were actually barriers, not just steps you had to pass. And while as a story, that's a great thing to tell in your after action from your hero's journey, it's also not the best way to be planning out your life as you're working towards a goal. Because if you're already setting a goal, you already have enough smarts to know what's going to happen and how things should go. That's a way to tell whether you're making your way towards the goal or not. So saying you stumble across something is one thing, but saying you're actually just living your life and working your goal and working your actions just one thing after another without actually keeping up with them is not true, number one, and just isn't great practice. So while it's technically possible to want to go to California and making your trip by filling your gas tank in your car and then just driving west, it's not the most practical way to get there. Because sure, you can stumble across California, or you could stumble into a lost desert place somewhere where you weren't really planning to be because bad planning put you someplace where you couldn't get out of a jam. So if you are having a moment where you're wondering if what you're doing is really worth the effort, take a moment to evaluate what it is you're doing and where it is you're supposed to be going, and not just letting dumb luck get you there. Have an actual plan of attack. Have an actual guideline to where you should be. Have a map. Have a checklist. Have something to let you know the difference between where you're starting and where you're ending and how many stops that should be there as you go along the way. Now, granted, your path to success will probably not be a linear path. It won't be a straight line. In fact, it'll probably be a lot of going backwards and forwards and just stops for long extended periods of time. But that doesn't mean that your path to greatness is impossible or will take entirely too long to get there. And by the time you get there, it won't be worth it. That's another question in itself on the timing to get there. But you have to realize that anywhere you want to go is worth going, because you want to go there. And anywhere you want to go that's worth going is probably going to take a little bit of effort, because that's how life works. So blindly going into some direction and hoping that you end up there is the absolute worst path for anyone working towards anything. A person who wants to be a star athlete doesn't just show up one day on the court or on the field or the pitch or diamond, whatever sport there is they're playing, and just pick up the ball, rock, stick, and start swinging, throwing, running, and things happen. There are people who find out they have latent talents that people see and often want to get them into a sport and will teach them everything they need to, but you don't start off at the pros. No one starts there. You have to learn the fundamentals, learn the basics, and get in the game. One thing I learned from watching last night as I taped this is the day after the 2019 NBA draft, and there was plenty of clips of kids practicing in the backyard. There was some phenomenal clips of kids with their parents going through serious drills in high school as their youngins decided they had the talent and they wanted to be NBA stars. And so to get through the ranks of high school and whatever college they took, they had to make sure that they had the skills and ability to get there. The odd thing about it is there's only 2 rounds of drafting in basketball. So there's only basically 2 shots to get into for every single team in the league to get in as a rookie. And then you can work your way in for undrafted in different ways and be picked up in other spots. There's only 2 guaranteed shots to get into the game, barring any trading or whatnot. For football, because it's a much larger field, and baseball as well, there are multiple rounds. And for baseball, it's really, really difficult because in baseball, they draft you, but not to play for the big team, to go play for some very exclusive, very tiny, meaningless team out in the middle of nowhere. And your purpose for that isn't even to win. It's just to learn how to play the game so that when someone goes down in the majors, you're able to take their spot immediately and then take over where you need to go. Those take planning. Those take time. Those takes a thought process that may or may not plan out. All those kids that were out there in the backyard shooting hoops, who graduated to kids who were in the backyard doing full drills, to graduate to kids who made it to college doing full drills with real coaches, all those kids can't make it to the NBA. There's only so many teams and so many open spots. And trust me, plenty of spots that are already taken, those guys don't want to give them up in the first place. What you get yourself into when you're trying to change your lifestyle or change the mind of a person or change the world, if you will, is that there must be some sort of idea to get to, and there must be some steps before you get to the ultimate idea. There must be a plan in place. You can't just stumble onto greatness. Those are great stories. Who said, if we open up, you just sort of fell into a certain career path, and then all of a sudden, bam, you were at the top of your game. And that may have happened, but you had to fall into the career path and then work your way up to the top of your game. You don't fall into the top of a game anywhere. It is pretty much impossible. So go ahead and back away from thinking that. So here's what you do whenever you have any sort of idea that you're a little unsure of whether it's actually going to pan out. Number one, you sit and you think about the idea intently. You can call it praying, you can call it meditating, you can call it diagramming, you can do whatever you want to do with the idea and your time. But you take some time and you go over the idea and you think about where the ending might be. And you think about where you think the beginning actually is. And you think about all the steps in the middle that you don't really want to get to and all the steps in the middle that you may not have thought about that may appear somewhere in the middle. And of course, while you're making that journey, there'll be other steps in the middle that will not be things you thought about that will have to be attended to, but you can't really worry about those. You think about all the things that you see as obvious steps, all the things that may come about because you have that imagination, and how much work you want to put into that effort to get to the end. You may find that just by thinking about it, you don't want to deal with it. There's things you don't want to deal with or don't want to deal with now. So if that's the case, you put the idea on the shelf and let it marinate and maybe pull it down and another issue comes that may make it a viable idea. Otherwise, you start getting to work. Number two, you get to work. Now, this should be you make a plan to get to work, but no, planning is a part of getting to work and getting it done. If you see where the end is supposed to be and you can see where you are right now, you can draw a line from here to there and see what's going up next. Start by doing what's next and seeing while the plan goes along. You don't have to have every single step planned out. So things falling into place is something that may happen, but you do have to have the first couple of steps going towards the end and knowing when you get to certain milestones where to go. It's not so much your job to figure out every single thing that must be done. It must be every single thing to get to a certain milestone where you can evaluate, rest a little bit, and keep on going. And sometimes the rest and evaluation time is not very much. It's like, here's your opportunity, here's your next opportunity, jump on it now. But you have to know when you get there and what to do from there. And, of course, evaluate whether going further is ready to do right now or ready to do even at all. Finally, you've got to put a little trust into your idea and belief into yourself and toss it out to the universe, if you will. You don't need to tell the world about what's going on, but you need to tell just enough people so that when you start making that trek into the desert, they'll know if you don't come back in a few days to come looking for you. Some people will essentially down your idea instantly because they don't like you, they don't like it, they don't like ideas. Some people will be hesitant because they like you, but they're not so sure exactly what you want to do makes sense, at least not in their heads. And some people were like, hey, let's gas up the car and let's go west. I love it. We're driving west till we get to California. They'll be a little too eager to get into your plan. But that's the group of people you need input from, all of them. All the input you can from all the people, letting you know what bits and pieces make sense, don't make sense as you get going. And like I said, you may be out in the middle of the desert and you may get lost and you may need someone to go out there and look for you, and they'll be there for that. Being too dumb to know better and succeeding in the process is a horrible plan. So don't plan for that. Actually put out a plan and get to work. Thank you for tuning in to the podcast this week. Thank you so much for tuning in its duration. And thank you for keeping up with everything we have going on. We are hitting milestones with this podcast, with our work at yourbetteryou.info. We're hitting them every single day. And milestones mean absolutely nothing unless they're attached to you guys to help us get there and celebrate. So we're going to celebrate every single step we make in this process. Don't forget about all the things at yourbetteryou.info. There's this podcast, 10-Minute Life Lesson Podcast, the 90-second podcast, even shorter version, which is Steps Your Better You, and you get articles and information on how you can get hooked up with me for coaching. Even it's something as simple as a quick conversation, a long-term group in a cohort get put together, some accountability coaching for checking in every single week, whatever it is you're looking for. We have something in your price range and your time frame to help you get on that path to better. So check it out at yourbetteryou.info. Email us at yourbetteryouinfo@gmail.com. And of course, you can check me out at jclevelandpayne.net or email me directly at jclevelandpayne@gmail.com. Once again, we are doing what we can to tweak the technology and tweak the content, tweak the process. A much shorter intro, which means a little bit more extra information. Still 10 minutes and then you can get this thing going. So that's the cool thing. That's always going to be the case. And so let us know how well we're doing. Talk to us in the comment section or in the way I told you before, email us as let us know what's going on there as well. And of course, if you're not subscribed to this podcast and you enjoy it, subscribe to it. We're pretty much anywhere pods are cast, so find us there and share the podcast with other like-minded people looking for making themselves a little bit better. And it's all about, finding a little bit of improvement here and there every single day to find a true better you. Thank you so much for joining us for this podcast, and we'll see you next week with another edition of great information and a life lesson you can go forth and get onto within 10 minutes. Literally 10 minutes from the 10-Minute Life Lesson Podcast from yourbetteryou.info.